Guadalcanal, November 12, 1942, 0530 hours, and Colonel Takeshi Yamamoto of the Japanese 38th Infantry Regiment stands in his command bunker overlooking Henderson Field, watching 2,800 elite soldiers prepare for what Japanese military doctrine promises will be a decisive assault against American Marine positions. His regiment carries the Emperor's personal battle flag and has been promised that one final coordinated attack will drive the Americans into the sea. What Colonel Yamamoto cannot possibly know, what no Japanese infantry officer could imagine in their most fevered nightmares, is that American factories have placed into the hands of every Marine rifleman a weapon that will turn disciplined Japanese infantry charges into killing fields of unprecedented horror. Within 6 hours, the distinctive ping of ejecting M1 Garand en-bloc clips will become the sound of death itself as 8 rapid shots delivered with semi-automatic precision shatter the Imperial Army's most fundamental tactical assumptions about infantry combat. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Japanese 38th Infantry Regiment had earned its reputation through 2 years of victories across the Pacific, from the conquest of the Philippines to the lightning advance through the Dutch East Indies. Colonel Yamamoto, a veteran of the China campaign, commanded soldiers who had perfected the art of the coordinated infantry assault, using disciplined fire and movement tactics that had overwhelmed every enemy they had faced. The regiment's 2,800 men were equipped with the Arisaka Type 38 rifle, a weapon Japanese military doctrine considered superior to any Allied small arm due to its accuracy, reliability, and the marksmanship training that made Japanese soldiers deadly at ranges exceeding 400 meters. Major Hiroshi Tanaka, commanding the regiment's 1st Battalion, had drilled his 900 men relentlessly in the tactics that had brought victory after victory. Japanese infantry doctrine emphasized the coordinated advance under covering fire, with riflemen advancing by squads while others provided accurate, aimed fire from fixed positions. Each Japanese soldier carried 120 rounds of 6.5mm ammunition and had been trained to make every shot count, engaging targets with deliberate aim rather than volume of fire. The Arisaka's 5-round internal magazine required individual loading of cartridges or the use of stripper clips, but Japanese training emphasized that disciplined soldiers needed fewer shots to achieve the same results as spray-and-pray Americans. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Captain Kenji Nakamura, leading the assault companies of the 2nd Battalion, understood that his men possessed advantages beyond just superior marksmanship. Japanese infantry had been trained in night-fighting techniques that American forces seemed unable to counter effectively. The ability to move silently through jungle terrain, coordinate attacks without radio communication, and maintain unit cohesion during complex maneuvers had proven decisive in previous battles. Nakamura's men had studied American defensive positions for weeks, identifying weak points where concentrated assault could break through Marine lines. The Japanese tactical doctrine for infantry combat was based on the principle of fire superiority through superior marksmanship and coordinated movement. Each squad of 12 men included 2 light machine gunners with Type 96 weapons, providing automatic fire support while riflemen advanced using cover and concealment. The coordination between machine gun positions and rifleman movement had been perfected through hundreds of training exercises, creating a tactical system that could concentrate overwhelming firepower at decisive points while minimizing exposure to enemy fire. Lieutenant Colonel Shiro Watanabe, the regiment's operations officer, had planned the assault based on intelligence reports suggesting American Marines were demoralized and poorly equipped. Japanese reconnaissance indicated that Marine positions were thinly held and that their weapons were inferior to Japanese equipment. The plan called for simultaneous attacks from 3 directions, with each battalion advancing in coordinated waves that would overwhelm American defenses through sheer discipline and superior tactics. What the Japanese intelligence officers observing Marine positions could not see, could not comprehend from their understanding of infantry weapons, was the revolutionary change that had transformed every American rifleman into a one-man weapons system capable of delivering devastating firepower. In the hands of Marines defending Guadalcanal was the M1 Garand, a semi-automatic rifle that represented the most significant advancement in infantry weapons since the invention of the magazine-fed bolt-action rifle. The M1 Garand had been developed through years of experimentation by John Garand, a Canadian-born engineer working at the Springfield Armory in Massachusetts. Beginning in 1919, Garand had struggled with the fundamental challenge of creating a self-loading rifle that could deliver the accuracy and reliability required for military service while maintaining the stopping power necessary for combat effectiveness. The breakthrough came with the development of the gas-operated mechanism that used propellant gases from the fired cartridge to cycle the action, ejecting the spent case and chambering a fresh round automatically. The technical specifications of the M1 Garand represented a quantum leap in infantry firepower. The rifle fired the powerful .30-06 Springfield cartridge, delivering a 150-grain bullet at 2,800 feet per second with devastating terminal ballistics. Unlike bolt-action rifles that required manual cycling between shots, the Garand's gas-operated system allowed trained riflemen to fire aimed shots as fast as they could pull the trigger. The 8-round Bloc clip system meant that Marines could deliver sustained fire without the constant reloading that limited bolt-action rifles to individual shots or small bursts. John Garand's most ingenious innovation was the Bloc clip feeding system that addressed the fundamental problem of rapid reloading under combat conditions. Traditional bolt-action rifles required soldiers to manually load individual cartridges or use stripper clips that fed rounds into an internal magazine, a process that took precious seconds, during which the rifleman was vulnerable and unable to maintain fire. The Garand's Bloc clip contained 8 cartridges in a self-contained unit that could be loaded into the rifle in a single motion, automatically positioning all 8 rounds for feeding into the chamber. The mechanical precision of the Bloc clip system was revolutionary in its simplicity and effectiveness. When the last round was fired, the empty clip was automatically ejected with the distinctive metallic ping that would become the signature sound of American infantry combat. The ejection system used the final round's gas pressure to operate a clip latch mechanism that released the empty clip while simultaneously locking the bolt open, indicating to the rifleman that reloading was necessary. A fresh 8-round clip could be inserted and the action released in less than 3 seconds by trained operators. Engineer Captain Robert Morrison of the Army Ordnance Department had overseen the production modifications that transformed Garand's prototype into a mass-production weapon suitable for equipping millions of American soldiers. The manufacturing process required precision machining of over 50 individual components, each manufactured to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. The barrel alone required 47 separate machining operations, while the operating rod and gas cylinder system demanded metallurgy techniques that pushed American industrial capabilities to their limits. By November 1942, the 1st Marine Division defending Guadalcanal had been completely equipped with M1 Garands, representing over 15,000 rifles that had been manufactured in the sprawling production facilities at Springfield Armory and Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Each Marine had received intensive training on the weapon's operation, learning to field strip and reassemble the complex mechanism in complete darkness, to clear jams under combat conditions, and to achieve accurate fire at ranges up to 500 yards. Sergeant Thomas McKenna of Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, had trained his squad in the tactical employment of the M1 Garand until the weapon became an extension of each Marine's body. McKenna understood that the Garand's semi-automatic capability meant that traditional infantry tactics had to be completely reconsidered. Instead of the deliberate aimed fire that characterized bolt-action engagements, Marines could now deliver suppressing fire while maneuvering, maintain continuous pressure on enemy positions, and respond to threats with immediate, overwhelming firepower. The training regimen for M1 Garand employment emphasized rapid target acquisition and engagement, teaching Marines to fire double taps and controlled bursts rather than single-aimed shots. Each Marine carried 80 rounds of ammunition in 10 8-round clips, providing sustained firepower that could be maintained throughout extended engagements. The clips themselves were carried in specially designed pouches that allowed rapid access during combat, with Marines trained to reload by feel alone when visibility was limited. Corporal James Patterson, a squad leader in Easy Company, had developed techniques for maximizing the Garand's effectiveness in jungle fighting conditions. Patterson taught his men to use the rifle's semi-automatic capability to walk fire onto targets, starting with an initial aimed shot and then adjusting subsequent rounds based on observation of impacts. This technique proved devastatingly effective against enemy soldiers attempting to move between covered positions, as the rapid follow-up shots prevented successful displacement. The production of M1 Garands for the Pacific Theater represented one of the most impressive manufacturing achievements of World War II, requiring the coordination of hundreds of suppliers and the development of entirely new production techniques. Springfield Armory, the primary manufacturer, had to completely retool its facilities and train thousands of workers in the precision manufacturing required for the weapon's complex mechanism. The barrel manufacturing process alone demonstrated the technical sophistication required for M1 Garand production. Each barrel began as a solid steel billet that was gun-drilled to create the bore, then reamed and rifled using specialized machinery that could maintain tolerances of plus or minus 0.0005 inches. The rifling process used a single-point cutting tool that made 4 passes through the barrel, cutting the spiral grooves that would impart spin to the bullet and ensure accuracy at extended ranges. Quality Control Inspector Margaret Chen at Springfield Armory oversaw the testing procedures that ensured every M1 Garand met military specifications before shipment to combat units. Each rifle was test-fired with proof loads that exceeded normal operating pressures, verifying that the gas system functioned properly and that accuracy met minimum standards. Chen's department rejected approximately 3% of completed rifles, sending them back for rework or scrapping components that could not meet specifications. The en-bloc clip manufacturing proved equally challenging, requiring precision stamping and forming operations that created the distinctive curved shape necessary for proper feeding. Each clip was made from special spring steel that had to maintain its shape under the stress of repeated loading and firing, while providing the precise spring tension needed for reliable feeding. The clips were tested in special machines that simulated thousands of loading and ejection cycles, ensuring reliability under combat conditions. Winchester Repeating Arms Company, the secondary manufacturer, had developed innovative production techniques that increased output while maintaining quality standards. Winchester's engineers created specialized assembly lines where workers became experts in individual operations, reducing the time required to complete each rifle while improving consistency. The company's production peaked at over 600 rifles per day, with each weapon requiring approximately 150 hours of skilled labor to complete. The effectiveness of the M1 Garand was inseparable from the development of the .30-06 Springfield cartridge that powered the weapon's gas-operated system. The cartridge represented the culmination of decades of ballistics research, combining a 150-grain boat-tail bullet with a precisely measured powder charge that provided optimal performance in the Garand's 24-inch barrel. Ballistics engineer Dr. Franklin Cooper at Frankfurt Arsenal had overseen the development of the specific .30-06 load optimized for the M1 Garand's gas system. The cartridge required precise powder charges that would generate sufficient gas pressure to operate the rifle's mechanism, while avoiding excessive pressures that could damage the weapon or create dangerous conditions for the operator. The powder burn rate had to be carefully controlled to ensure consistent gas port pressures throughout the barrel's useful life. The bullet design incorporated aerodynamic features that extended effective range and improved terminal ballistics. The boat tail configuration reduced drag in flight, maintaining velocity and accuracy at extended ranges, while the bullet's core and jacket were designed to expand reliably upon impact with soft targets while retaining sufficient mass to penetrate light cover and equipment. Manufacturing the millions of rounds required for M1 Garand-equipped forces demanded the construction of entirely new ammunition production facilities. Lake City Army Ammunition Plant in Missouri became the primary producer of .30-06 ammunition, with production lines capable of manufacturing over 6 million rounds per day. The precision required for consistent performance meant that each cartridge case was inspected multiple times during production, with strict tolerances maintained for case dimensions, powder charges, and bullet seating depth. The Japanese military intelligence apparatus that had successfully gathered information about American forces throughout the early Pacific campaign suffered from fundamental blind spots when it came to understanding the M1 Garand's capabilities. Japanese observers had noted that American forces carried different rifles than the bolt-action Springfields used in World War I, but they failed to comprehend the revolutionary nature of the weapon's semi-automatic operation. Colonel Masaru Fujita, chief intelligence officer for the Japanese 17th Army, had received reports describing American rifles that could fire multiple shots without reloading, but these reports were dismissed as exaggerated accounts from demoralized troops. Japanese military doctrine held that individual marksmanship was more important than rate of fire, leading intelligence analysts to conclude that American semi-automatic weapons sacrificed accuracy for unnecessary rapid-fire capability. The Japanese understanding of American infantry tactics was further clouded by their own doctrinal assumptions about proper infantry employment. Japanese officers expected that American forces would employ tactics similar to their own, with riflemen advancing under covering fire from machine guns and engaging targets with deliberate, aimed shots. The concept that individual riflemen could deliver suppressing fire while maneuvering was foreign to Japanese tactical thinking. Major Takeshi Kawamura, responsible for tactical intelligence at the divisional level, had interviewed Japanese soldiers who claimed to have faced rapid-firing American weapons, but these accounts were attributed to the confusion of combat rather than actual weapon capabilities. The systematic failure to understand American weapon systems would prove catastrophic when Japanese infantry encountered the full firepower of M1 Garand-equipped Marines in close combat. As dawn broke over Guadalcanal on November 12, 1942, the stage was set for a confrontation that would demonstrate the revolutionary impact of the M1 Garand on infantry combat. Colonel Yamamoto's 2,800 elite Japanese soldiers, armed with bolt-action Arisaka rifles and trained in tactics that emphasized discipline and marksmanship, prepared to advance against Marine positions defended by men carrying weapons that could deliver 8 rapid shots with devastating accuracy. The Japanese assault plan called for coordinated attacks that would overwhelm American positions through superior numbers and tactical coordination. Each Japanese soldier would advance using cover and concealment, engaging targets with carefully aimed shots, while supporting automatic weapons provided covering fire. The plan assumed that American resistance would collapse once Japanese infantry closed to effective rifle range, where superior Japanese marksmanship would prove decisive. What Colonel Yamamoto could not anticipate was that every Marine defending the perimeter possessed individual firepower equivalent to an entire Japanese squad. The 15,000 M1 Garands defending Henderson Field represented a concentration of semi-automatic rifles that had never before been employed in combat, creating a defensive capability the Japanese tactical doctrine had no framework for understanding or countering. Sergeant McKenna, positioned in a defensive position overlooking the Japanese approach routes, checked his ammunition one final time, ensuring that each of his 10 8-round clips was properly seated in his cartridge belt. Around him, Marines made similar preparations, their M1 Garands loaded and ready to demonstrate the devastating effectiveness of America's industrial and engineering superiority. The battle that was about to unfold would mark the end of an era in infantry combat, as the age of bolt-action rifles gave way to the semi-automatic revolution. The distinctive ping of ejecting in-block clips would soon echo across the jungle, marking not just empty rifles, but the death of traditional infantry tactics and the birth of modern small-unit warfare. At 0630 hours, Captain Kenji Nakamura raised his sword and signaled the advance, unaware that he was leading his men into the first encounter between traditional bolt-action infantry and the semi-automatic revolution. The 300 soldiers of his assault companies moved forward through the jungle undergrowth with the disciplined precision that had brought victory across the Pacific, their Arisaka rifles loaded and ready for the coordinated fire and movement tactics that had never failed them. What Captain Nakamura could not anticipate was that within minutes, the distinctive metallic ping of ejecting M1 Garand clips would become the soundtrack to the destruction of his command. Sergeant McKenna, watching through his rifle sights as the Japanese soldiers emerged from the tree line 150 yards away, felt the familiar weight of his M1 Garand and the reassuring presence of 10 loaded 8-round clips on his cartridge belt. Unlike his grandfather, who had fought with single-shot rifles in the Spanish-American War, or his father, who had carried a bolt-action Springfield in France, McKenna possessed firepower that could engage 8 targets before reloading, maintaining continuous fire throughout an engagement that would have required careful ammunition management with earlier weapons. The first indication that something unprecedented was about to occur came when Private Yoshiro Matsuda, advancing with Nakamura's lead squad, spotted American positions and raised his Arisaka to engage what appeared to be a single Marine rifleman. Matsuda, trained in the deliberate marksmanship that characterized Japanese infantry tactics, took careful aim and fired his first shot, working the bolt action to chamber a second round while scanning for his target's reaction. What he saw instead was muzzle flashes erupting from multiple American positions as 8 M1 Garands opened fire simultaneously. McKenna's first shot struck Matsuda's center mass, the 150-grain .30-06 bullet, delivering 2,800 foot-pounds of energy that dropped the Japanese soldier instantly. But unlike the single-shot engagements that characterized bolt-action combat, McKenna immediately fired his second shot at another target, then a third and fourth in rapid succession. Around him, 9 other Marines were delivering the same devastating rapid fire, their semi-automatic rifles turning individual fighting positions into machine gun nests. The technical superiority of the M1 Garand became immediately apparent as Marine riflemen engaged multiple targets without the manual cycling required by bolt-action weapons. Corporal Patterson, positioned 50 yards to McKenna's left, fired his first shot at a Japanese squad leader, immediately shifted his aim to engage a soldier attempting to take cover, then fired a third shot at a Japanese rifleman who had exposed himself while working his bolt action. The ability to maintain continuous fire while adjusting aim allowed Patterson to suppress an entire enemy squad single-handedly. Captain Nakamura, watching his carefully planned assault dissolve into chaos, tried to comprehend the volume of fire coming from American positions. His tactical training had prepared him for engagements where individual riflemen fired aimed shots with deliberate precision, allowing coordinated advances under covering fire. Instead, his men faced continuous streams of accurate fire that prevented any movement and eliminated soldiers faster than they could engage targets or seek cover. The Japanese assault doctrine that had proven successful throughout the Pacific Campaign was based on the assumption that enemy riflemen could deliver only single shots before requiring several seconds to reload. Japanese squad tactics called for rushes between covered positions while enemy riflemen were cycling their bolt actions, a technique that had overwhelmed Chinese, Dutch, and Filipino forces armed with similar bolt-action weapons. Against Marines equipped with M1 Garands, these tactics became exercises in mass suicide. Lieutenant Kazuo Taniguchi, leading the second assault wave, watched in horror as his 30-man platoon was cut down by what appeared to be a handful of American riflemen. Each time his soldiers attempted to advance during what should have been the Americans' reloading period, they encountered continued accurate fire that eliminated them before they could close within effective range of their own weapons. The psychological impact proved as devastating as the physical casualties, as Japanese soldiers realized their fundamental tactical assumptions were catastrophically wrong. Sergeant First Class Roberto Martinez, a squad leader in Easy Company, demonstrated the tactical revolution enabled by the M1 Garand's 8-shot capability. Observing Japanese soldiers attempting to rush his position during what they assumed was his reloading period, Martinez fired his remaining 6 rounds in rapid succession, eliminating every member of the advancing squad before they could close within 100 yards. The manual bolt action of the Arisaka rifles meant that surviving Japanese soldiers required 3 to 4 seconds between shots, while Martinez could fire aimed shots as rapidly as he could acquire targets. The on-block clip system proved equally revolutionary during sustained engagements, allowing Marines to reload in under 3 seconds and resume fire before Japanese soldiers could exploit the brief pause. Private Anthony Kowalski, engaged in a firefight with a Japanese squad that had taken cover behind fallen logs, emptied his first 8-round clip in less than 12 seconds, experienced the distinctive ping of the ejecting clip, inserted a fresh clip and resumed firing before the Japanese soldiers could emerge from cover to advance. Major Tanaka, attempting to coordinate his battalion's assault from a position 200 yards behind the front lines, realized that his carefully planned attack had encountered something beyond his tactical understanding. Reports from his company commanders described American positions that seemed to possess unlimited ammunition and the ability to engage multiple targets simultaneously. The concept that individual riflemen could deliver suppressing fire was foreign to Japanese doctrine, which treated automatic weapons as specialized equipment requiring dedicated crews and support. The firepower differential became mathematically overwhelming as the engagement continued. Each squad of 12 Marines armed with M1 Garands could deliver 96 rounds before requiring reloading, completing this fire mission in less than 2 minutes. A comparable Japanese squad armed with bolt-action Arisakas could fire a maximum of 60 rounds in the same period, but only if they maintained continuous aimed fire without seeking cover or maneuvering. The Americans' ability to fire while moving and reloading while under cover created a tactical advantage that Japanese training had never anticipated. The personal experiences of Marines using M1 Garands in combat revealed the weapon's revolutionary impact on individual fighting capability. Corporal James Henderson, a veteran of the Solomon Islands campaign, described the psychological transformation that occurred when he realized he could engage multiple targets in rapid succession without the vulnerability period that characterized bolt-action combat. Henderson recounted engaging a Japanese squad of 8 soldiers, firing double taps at each target while advancing from one covered position to another, eliminating the entire squad before they could coordinate a response. Private First Class Michael O'Brien, previously armed with a bolt-action Springfield rifle during training, experienced the M1 Garand's capabilities during his first combat engagement on Guadalcanal. O'Brien described the confidence that came from knowing he possessed 8 immediately available shots, allowing him to engage targets of opportunity without conserving ammunition for critical moments. The psychological impact extended beyond individual confidence to tactical aggressiveness, as Marines armed with Garands could pursue fleeing enemies and maintain pressure on defensive positions. The technical precision of the M1 Garand's semi-automatic action proved equally important in jungle fighting conditions where targets appeared briefly before disappearing into heavy vegetation. Sergeant William Thompson, leading a patrol through dense jungle terrain, encountered Japanese soldiers at ranges varying from 25 to 200 yards, engaging each target with rapid fire that prevented escape or counterattack. The bolt-action Arisaka rifles carried by Japanese soldiers required deliberate aim and manual cycling that proved inadequate for the fluid conditions of jungle combat. Hospital corpsman David Chen, treating wounded Japanese soldiers captured during the engagement, observed the devastating terminal ballistics of the .30-06 cartridge fired from M1 Garands. The high-velocity rounds created massive wound channels that often proved fatal even when striking non-vital areas, while the bullet's penetration capability defeated the light body armor and equipment worn by Japanese infantry. Chen noted that Japanese soldiers wounded by Garand fire required immediate surgical intervention that was rarely available in forward combat areas. The maintenance and reliability of M1 Garands under combat conditions exceeded expectations, with Marines reporting fewer malfunctions than experienced with bolt-action rifles in similar environments. The self-cleaning action of the gas-operated system expelled debris and fouling that could jam manually operated weapons, while the robust construction withstood the abuse of jungle combat. Armorer Sergeant Frank Rodriguez reported that M1 Garands required less field maintenance than bolt-action rifles, despite their more complex mechanism. By 0800 hours, Colonel Yamamoto realized that his regiment was experiencing something that would fundamentally alter Japanese understanding of infantry combat. Of his initial assault force of 2,800 soldiers, fewer than 800 remained combat effective, with casualties mounting at rates that exceeded any previous engagement. The systematic failure of time-tested Japanese tactics against American semi-automatic rifles forced a complete reevaluation of infantry capabilities and limitations. Major Kawamura, attempting to organize a coordinated withdrawal, discovered that Japanese soldiers were psychologically shattered by their encounter with M1 Garand firepower. Veteran NCOs who had led successful assaults across the Pacific reported that American positions possessed firepower equivalent to machine gun companies, making infantry assault impossible without overwhelming numerical superiority. The sound of ejecting en-bloc clips had become associated with imminent death, causing panic among soldiers who had previously shown exceptional courage under fire. The tactical lessons emerging from the engagement revealed fundamental flaws in Japanese intelligence and doctrine. Lieutenant Colonel Watanabe, observing the battle from his command post, realized that American forces possessed individual weapons superior to anything in the Japanese arsenal. The failure to recognize the M1 Garand's capabilities had resulted in tactical planning based on incorrect assumptions about enemy firepower and combat effectiveness. Japanese attempts to adapt their tactics to counter semi-automatic rifles proved largely ineffective due to the fundamental advantages conferred by the 8-shot capability. Captain Nakamura, reorganizing his surviving soldiers for a second assault, discovered that traditional fire and movement techniques required modification when facing enemies who could maintain continuous fire. The brief vulnerability periods that characterized bolt-action reloading had disappeared, eliminating the tactical windows that Japanese doctrine depended upon. The psychological impact on Japanese morale proved as significant as the tactical defeat, as soldiers who had considered themselves elite infantry realized they were equipped with obsolete weapons. Private Hiroshi Yamada, one of the few survivors from the first assault wave, described the terror of hearing multiple M1 Garands firing in rapid succession, creating a sound like continuous machine gun fire that seemed to come from every American position simultaneously. General Harukichi Hyakutake, commanding Japanese forces on Guadalcanal, received reports of the engagement with growing alarm as he realized that American forces possessed capabilities that Japanese planning had never anticipated. The failure of elite infantry units against what appeared to be standard American defensive positions suggested that fundamental assumptions about the Pacific War were incorrect. The revelation that individual American riflemen possessed firepower superior to Japanese squad automatic weapons had implications that extended far beyond a single engagement. The intelligence reports reaching Japanese headquarters described American weapons that fired 8 shots without reloading, eliminated entire squads with single operators, and maintained continuous fire throughout extended engagements. These capabilities seemed impossible based on Japanese understanding of infantry weapons, leading to initial dismissal of combat reports as exaggerated accounts from demoralized troops. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, reviewing intelligence summaries at Combined Fleet Headquarters, began to understand that Japan faced a technological challenge that extended beyond naval aviation and shipping. The revelation that American industry had equipped every infantryman with semi-automatic rifles suggested manufacturing capabilities and tactical innovation that Japanese planners had severely underestimated. The implication that American forces possessed systematic advantages in individual combat effectiveness threatened the entire strategic framework for Pacific operations. Japanese military analysts, struggling to comprehend the M1 Garand's impact on infantry combat, began developing new tactical doctrines that acknowledged American firepower superiority. These emergency modifications included night attack techniques designed to negate American advantages in aimed fire, increased emphasis on artillery and automatic weapon support, and the development of infiltration tactics that avoided direct confrontation with American rifle companies. The broader implications for Japanese strategy became apparent as reports from other Pacific theaters confirmed that American forces were universally equipped with semi-automatic rifles. The systematic upgrading of American infantry capabilities meant that Japanese forces faced enemies with individual firepower equivalent to what had previously required squad automatic weapons. This revelation forced recalculation of force ratios and tactical planning throughout the Japanese military hierarchy. The casualties from the first major engagement between Japanese bolt-action rifles and American M1 Garands revealed the devastating human cost of technological disparity in modern warfare. Japanese medical personnel treating survivors reported wound patterns unlike anything experienced in previous campaigns, with multiple gunshot wounds indicating that American riflemen could engage the same target several times in rapid succession. Dr. Takeshi Nakamura, a Japanese military surgeon treating casualties from the Guadalcanal engagement, observed that American rifle fire created wound complexes that were often beyond the capability of field medical treatment. The high-velocity .30-06 rounds fired from M1 Garands created massive tissue damage that required immediate surgical intervention, rarely available in forward combat areas. Japanese soldiers who survived initial wounding often succumbed to blood loss and shock before reaching aid stations. The psychological trauma experienced by Japanese survivors extended beyond normal combat stress to include a fundamental loss of confidence in their tactical training and equipment. Lieutenant Yoshio Kodama, evacuated after witnessing the destruction of his company, reported recurring nightmares about the sound of ejecting Bloc clips and the sight of American muzzle flashes that seemed to fire continuously without pause. American medical personnel treating their own wounded noted significantly lower casualty rates compared to engagements against enemies armed with comparable weapons. Hospital corpsman Robert Martinez attributed reduced American casualties to the suppressive effect of M1 Garand fire, which prevented enemy soldiers from maintaining aimed fire or coordinating effective counterattacks. The psychological impact of facing semi-automatic rifles appeared to degrade Japanese marksmanship and tactical effectiveness. The contrast in combat effectiveness became apparent through prisoner interrogations, as captured Japanese soldiers expressed amazement at American firepower and tactical capabilities.
Sergeant Major Kenji Watanabe, captured during the failed assault, described American positions that seemed to possess unlimited ammunition and the ability to engage multiple targets simultaneously, capabilities that Japanese training had never prepared him to encounter.
The success of the M1 Garand in Pacific combat validated American approaches to military innovation and industrial production that would influence weapons development for decades. The combination of engineering excellence, manufacturing precision, and tactical integration demonstrated by the Garand program established patterns for future military technology development. The weapon's performance under combat conditions proved that American industry could produce complex weapon systems at scales that overwhelmed enemy capabilities. Post-war analysis of M1 Garand effectiveness revealed the importance of the Bloc clip system in maintaining sustained firepower during extended engagements. The ability to reload in under 3 seconds while maintaining situational awareness proved crucial in fluid combat situations where tactical advantage shifted rapidly. Japanese attempts to develop comparable weapons were hindered by manufacturing limitations and resource constraints that prevented effective competition with American production. The tactical doctrine developed around M1 Garand employment influenced American military thinking throughout the remainder of World War II and into subsequent conflicts. The integration of semi-automatic rifles into squad tactics, the emphasis on sustained firepower, and the psychological advantages of superior individual weapons became standard elements of American infantry doctrine. The lessons learned from Guadalcanal and similar engagements shaped training programs and tactical development for generations of American soldiers. International military observers studying the Pacific Campaign identified the M1 Garand as one of the decisive weapons of World War II, comparable in impact to radar, aircraft carriers, and strategic bombing. The systematic advantage conferred by equipping every rifleman with semi-automatic capability transformed infantry combat in ways that influenced military planning worldwide. The weapon's success demonstrated the importance of individual soldier effectiveness in determining tactical outcomes. The engineering principles demonstrated by the M1 Garand's gas-operated system influenced post-war rifle development globally, as military forces recognized the tactical advantages of semi-automatic infantry weapons. The integration of precision manufacturing, reliable mechanical systems, and effective ammunition design established benchmarks for military small arms that persisted into the modern era. John Garand's innovative engineering solutions continued to influence weapons design decades after World War II ended.
As the sun set over Guadalcanal on November 12, 1942, Colonel Yamamoto surveyed the remnants of his once proud regiment and realized that the Imperial Japanese Army had encountered something that would change the fundamental nature of infantry warfare. The distinctive ping of ejecting M1 Garand clips had become the sound of American technological and industrial superiority, marking the end of an era when individual marksmanship and tactical discipline could overcome firepower advantages. The casualty reports reaching Japanese headquarters painted a picture of tactical disaster that went beyond normal combat losses to represent a systematic failure of doctrine and equipment. The 38th Infantry Regiment, which had begun the day with 2,800 elite soldiers, now counted fewer than 400 effective combatants, with casualties mounting at rates that made continued offensive operations impossible. The mathematical reality of firepower disparity had overwhelmed tactical skill and fighting spirit. Japanese medical personnel working through the night to treat casualties observed wound patterns that reflected the devastating effectiveness of .30-06 ammunition fired from M1 Garands. The high-velocity rounds created tissue damage that often proved fatal even when striking non-critical areas, while the ability of American riflemen to fire multiple shots at individual targets resulted in wound complexes beyond the capability of field medical treatment. The psychological impact on surviving Japanese soldiers extended beyond normal combat trauma to include a fundamental questioning of their tactical training and equipment adequacy. Veterans who had successfully employed fire and movement tactics across the Pacific found themselves confronting an enemy whose individual weapons negated the tactical advantages that Japanese doctrine depended upon. The realization that American riflemen possessed firepower equivalent to Japanese squad automatic weapons shattered confidence in traditional infantry tactics. American forces, meanwhile, experienced the psychological benefits of technological superiority as Marines realized that their individual weapons provided decisive advantages over enemy infantry. The confidence that came from possessing 8 immediately available shots, combined with rapid reloading capability, transformed American tactical thinking and aggressiveness. The M1 Garand had not merely improved American firepower, but had fundamentally altered the mental approach to infantry combat. The strategic implications of the engagement reached far beyond Guadalcanal to influence Japanese planning throughout the Pacific theater. The systematic failure of elite infantry units against American semi-automatic rifles suggested that previous calculations of force requirements and tactical capabilities were fundamentally flawed. Military planners who had assumed tactical parity between Japanese and American infantry were forced to acknowledge that technological advantages had created combat effectiveness disparities that could not be overcome through training or tactical innovation alone. The November 12th engagement marked the beginning of the end for Japanese confidence in infantry combat superiority, as subsequent battles throughout the Pacific confirmed the systematic advantages conferred by M1 Garand equipment. The sound of ejecting Bloc clips became synonymous with American tactical dominance, representing the successful integration of industrial capability, engineering innovation, and combat effectiveness that would characterize the remainder of the Pacific War. Years later, veterans of both sides would remember November 12, 1942, as the day when the age of bolt-action infantry combat ended and the era of semi-automatic firepower began. The 8-shot thunder of M1 Garand clips ejecting had announced not just the defeat of a Japanese regiment, but the technological revolution that would reshape infantry warfare for generations to come.